Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Legends of Tomorrow podcast. And we are here with another episode and another spotlight episode, and we are talking about Captain Cold and Heatwave and the Rogues, kind of, but mostly Captain Cold and Heatwave because they're the ones on the show. And we have a special guest with us today, too, Chris. So, Chris, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hey, I'm Chris Doucher, and my handle on Twitter is @comic_Canuck. I run a little website called geeknerdnet.com. It's all reviews, interviews with indie comics. But I'm also a fan, obviously, of the big two, of DC in particular. And I'm going to be on another podcast down the road, but we can talk about that later. So there you go. That's me. Hello.
Very cool. And, of course, we have Gregg here, my co-host. What's going on, Gregg? You excited to talk some Captain Cold and Heatwave?
Yes, very excited. I just drank some coffee, so I have plenty of energy. I'm good this time.
Awesome. So we are going to talk about the comic books first. Usually we talk about the show, but they haven't been in many episodes of the show. Of course, we will talk about The Flash because they appeared there, but we are going to talk about the comics. So the first thing we're going to talk about is Captain Cold himself. So let's go with Chris first. What do you think about Captain Cold? Are you a fan? You know, his origin story? What comics do you really like from him?
You know what? Excuse me. I've always loved Captain Cold just because he is a regular dude. And I think sometimes you get the strongest characters that way. Reading him over the years, whether it's pre-New 52 or post-New 52, they haven't really changed him too much in terms of his demeanor and what he's about. I do love the fact that he's just, he's a dude with a cold gun. But he's also a badass, if you don't mind me saying that. But I think he's just the Flash sometimes, many times, underestimates him, and as we've seen, whether in the comics or even on the TV show, that can trip him up a bit. No pun intended. But yeah, I just love the character. I like that he's written kind of raw, and I'm looking forward to seeing him on the new show. I think he's going to bring just that same sort of smart guy quality brought to the Flash. You know, we'll see. I look forward to seeing more layers of the character as they bring him out.
Yeah, same here. Is there any comics that you've read in the past that you could recommend to our viewers if they really want to get into Captain Cold, Chris?
You know what? I can't name any one in particular. I'd pick up. I think there's a hardcover that came out or a softcover that came out trade a few years back, 5 or 6 years ago. But you'd have to, again, don't quote me on it. I think if you just do a simple, say, Amazon search and do Flash Rogues, if you want a collection, you could do that and find it that way, or just do Captain Cold, like maybe type in Captain Cold Flash on Comixology, see what pops up, and it might bring you lists of comics to read. Like I said, I think the character, he's a really good character, so I think anyone would enjoy reading about him if they want to. So.
Awesome. Good recommendation, definitely, to do that. How about you, Gregg? Are you a big Captain Cold fan? What do you like about him in the comics, and is there anything you can recommend for our viewers?
Sure. Yeah, I like the character. I never read his first appearance, which is in Showcase number 8. Never got around to it because it's not available on Comixology, and I'm pretty sure it's a pretty expensive issue to buy.
Probably.
So I haven't purchased any bigger collections which would happen to include it. So I never got around to reading that. However, speaking of recommendations, Flash 182, which is by Jeff Johns and Scott Collins. It's really tough to miss because Captain Cold's right on the cover, aiming the two guns at the reader. It basically covers Captain Cold's origin and fleshes it out a little more. It shows that when he was young, he and his sister were abused by his father, and they physically abused. The father would hit them, and they also lived with their grandfather, who ran, I believe it was like an ice truck. Excuse me. Don't know what an ice trunk is. Not sure what that is, but it's an ice truck. So it's a really good issue because it explains his moral code as he's looking for vengeance. He explains, he's not a murderer, but he's not opposed to it if it's called for. Like in this case, it's revenge, which I think he said, like, nothing is more important than family except for revenge. I don't remember which issue that is, but I'm pretty certain he did. But he goes after Chilblain because something happened involving his sister, Lisa Snart, who eventually becomes Golden Glider in the pre-52 timeline. So yeah, I think that's a really great issue. Jeff Johns has said Captain Cold's his favorite villain, and it definitely shows because he's given the character a lot of love over the years. He's giving him a lot of love right now in the New 52, and as we know, he's giving him a lot of love in the CW universe. So that's definitely a comic I recommend first and foremost, and it even explains why he has those seemingly silly glasses. As for the gun, it's kind of cool. He meant to, when he was in prison, he was studying up on trying to slow Flash down another way, and the cold effect was like unexpected. So he just kind of embraced it, and that was it's a pretty neat thing. And also, I would recommend Flash 155. That's the first appearance of the Rogues. That's when the Mirror Master gets out of jail, gathers them all together. They all try to take on Flash. Obviously, they fail, and it's revealed that another villain was behind that. So it's kind of interesting that another villain who may or may not be a large telepathic being who's very hairy or furry. Do gorillas have hair or fur? I believe hair.
I think hair.
Hair? Let's go with hair. If we're wrong, please correct us and educate us on that. But yeah, so Grodd is responsible for the release of all these villains. So he is. It's interesting how he's the one who brought about the Rogues. But yeah, I like the character because he has a really interesting moral code. He said something, I wrote down the quote. I don't think I got it verbatim here, but something like he doesn't believe in evil, just different shades of gray. So he's an interesting villain, how, he's not opposed to being the good guy, but, he has that temptation where he obviously every now and then, not every now and then, a majority of the time is on the other side of the law. So yeah. I do like the character a lot. If we're talking about other stories, there's I have some written down here. Rogue's Revenge. That's after the death of a certain Flash. It includes Zoom. It also deals with the return of Captain Cold's father. And that obviously, like it says in the intro, deals with Final Crisis. So Libra's brought into that. And then in the New 52, I know he has his. There's a guy who fuses their weaponry into their DNA, so he has cold powers. But yes. I believe it was Jeff Johns and Forever Evil reverted that. So now Captain Cold is back to like the old school Captain Cold powers.
Yeah, he is. Yeah.
Well, not powers. Excuse me. His abilities, what he brings to a fight, the way he uses his weapons, and like I said before, Jeff Johns is giving him a lot of love. In Forever Evil, that shows, how he gets to become closer to the Justice League and becomes very close with Lex Luthor. And I never read it, but I know Blackest Night, The Flash #2. I know that highlights him, but I have not read that, so please forgive me.
Well, those are a lot of good recommendations. We lost Chris for a second, but hopefully he'll come back before we get into the next thing. But yeah, my thing on Captain Cold, I think he's a great villain. What I love about him is that he's not really, he is a villain, but he has a code. Not all villains have a code. He doesn't like killing, and I like that idea. I don't know if they really shown that on the show yet. We'll talk about that a bit more. I think in the comics they've definitely shown. Yeah, we got Chris back. Yeah, they definitely shown it in the comics. We lost you, Chris, for a moment, but I'm glad we got you back.
I sent you an email. It keeps freezing on my end, so sorry about that, guys.
No problem. Thank you for the email, though. Anyways, going back to Captain Cold. Yeah, he's a cool villain. I do like him, and I like that Jeff Johns has highlighted him a lot. Some recommendations. I'm going to go towards some newer books. Of course, Gregg was talking about Forever Evil. I recommend that if you're a big Captain Cold fan, because he gets a new status quo in Forever Evil, that now he's kind of part of the Justice League, but he's mostly working for Lex Luthor, who's like officially part of the Justice League. Hopefully they'll flesh that out even more. We haven't really seen Captain Cold interact with the Justice League just yet, because they have a big arc going on right now. So yeah, Forever Evil read. During Forever Evil, there was a miniseries called Forever Evil Rogues Rebellion. You can read that. I recommend reading Francis Matapool's and Brian Buccellato's run on The Flash. They had one right before the New 52 and during the New 52. They use the rogues pretty often, so go check that out. And that's where they have those. They get powers instead of weapons. If you want to look into that, I recommend it. So that's kind of all the newer books, since we did talk about the older books for the rogues. So those are recommendations. But now let's go into Heatwave. I'm going to start with Chris. Chris, what do you think about Heatwave, and are there any comics that you can recommend that you like with Heatwave?
You know what? I'll be brutally honest on this one. Heatwave. I haven't read a lot of Heatwave. I feel like I've read more Captain Cold than I ever have Heatwave, even though I've read stories with the Rogues, as a group. But Heatwave, I'm just gonna go to the Flash series for a second, like the character they put on TV, and I like him. It's not like I don't know who he is, but like I said, it's been a bit of a while since I've regularly read the Flash. But I'll listen to your recommendations on what to read on Heatwave, because I think there's more Captain Cold out there and other Rogues than there is Heatwave. But I love the attitude that they give him, and yeah, he's just a bad guy. He's bad, but I guess we'll see what happens in the new show. So
yeah, with Heatwave. Before I go, Greg. Heatwave is a character that I think is just so tied to Captain Cold. He hasn't really had his own type of stories, at least from what I've read. Maybe there are, just I haven't really seen them. He's definitely more attached to the Rogues and being part of that team. One I could recommend that I didn't recommend for Captain Cold is the latest issue of Flash Season 0. They had How Captain Cold and Heatwave Met, so you could check that out. It was a pretty good issue, and it's in digital first and also printed, but it's issue 11 of the printed. I read it printed, that book. So I can recommend that, but really all the Rogue stuff I mentioned before, Heatwave's in, but not like a main, he's not the main. I always think Captain Cold's like the main of the Rogues, which he is. He just gets more spotlight. So I can't really recommend, just Heatwave books. I was looking on Comic Vine, and I was like actually really surprised that he's not in as many books as I thought he was going to be. So hopefully after Legends Tomorrow, he gets more spotlight. But I really can't say much of do I love Heatwave? I don't know. I have to kind of learn more about him. I know enough about Captain Cold because he just has more spotlight. But how about you, Greg? Do you like Heatwave? Do you agree that he hasn't really had a spotlight?
I'm interested in the character. I can't claim that I've read all of his appearances, so there may be a great Heatwave story out there that I haven't read.
Yeah,
but one thing I forgot to mention, an interesting little tidbit, is they're both created by the same two people. Heatwave and Captain Cold were created by John Barum and Carmine Infantino. So I'm not sure if I pronounced his last name correctly, but yeah. So
sounds right.
Yeah. So Heatwave's first appearance, The Flash 140, and it's a very dated and because it's so dated, it's kind of amusing. Basically, Captain Cold tries to create this huge robbery to impress someone who's on TV named Dream Girl. I don't remember if she's like an anchor, reporter, or just has her own show.
A weather person.
Yeah, she goes by the name Dream Girl. Her real name is revealed in the issue. I don't recall it off the top of my head. But basically, I believe the Flash is getting the better of Captain Cold, and then Heatwave saves Captain Cold by shooting Flash. He basically sucker punches him with a blast of heat. And so they're like, yay, let's be friends. We both hate the Flash. So Captain Cold brings Heatwave back to his, cold cave, I guess I'll call it. There's no ice or anything anywhere. It's just like a cave, I believe. And in this cave, I remember he has, a desk and some chairs. And they're getting along. They're friends. And then there's a poster of Dream Girl. And Heatwave is like, what? You also like her? I'm doing all this to impress her. And Captain Cold is like, I am too. We're enemies now. And they try to shoot each other. Their weapons cancel each other out. And they go their separate ways, and they're bitter at one another. And it seems like their relationship since then, they're kind of frenemies. They've been allies a lot, but they've also been at odds a lot. But Captain Cold still views him as family because they're both part of the Rogues. And he's had an interesting history because he's been part of the FBI. He's tried to be a good guy. It was due to having his mind influenced, but still the potential was there to do something different with the character. And if you really want to read his origin in and if you can't get your hands on Flash 140, or if you don't feel like reading something that is so maybe doesn't hold up as well, Jeff Johns also fleshed out this guy's origin in the Flash 218. Again, it will be tough to miss because Heatwave is right on the cover. It's he has a very interesting origin. He's a pyromaniac. He's hypnotized by a flame, and then he accidentally sets a fire in his house. I believe it was a farm, and he goes outside to watch the fire, and his family dies. His family is like screaming for help out the window, and he doesn't do anything about it. He's just, he's stunned. He's just staring at the fire. It was very twisted, very interesting. And then he goes on, does I believe he lives with another family member. It doesn't work out. He goes to the circus as I think he was a fire breather. I believe it was fire breather or something, whether it was juggling fire or breathing fire, I don't recall. But he eventually leaves that as well. I think he burns down the circus. He leaves a trail of ashes. But so yeah, another story I would recommend is Rogue War. That gives Captain Cold a lot of attention as well, but it also fleshes out his dynamic with Heatwave. So that's, I believe, yeah, that's also Jeff Johns. I think that maybe, wasn't Rogue War his last story arc in his second volume of Flash?
I'm not sure. That's a good question.
I don't think it's the end of the volume, but it's like the end of his run on the second volume. Mm-hmm. So Rogue War is definitely something that should be read as well.
Yeah, so check out all those books. Now we're going to talk a little bit about the New 52, which I touched upon during the recommendations because I want to recommend some more books that are very attainable since they came out, relatively, in the past couple of months or in the past 2 years. But let's talk about the New 52, which is, just kind of over. So DC has said that the New 52 is over, but of course there's still stuff that comes out of the New 52. Now we're in the DCU, so that's point where we're up to. But let's talk about the New 52, how they're different from their pre-New 52 counterparts. Now, Chris, I know you haven't read a lot of New 52, but is there anything that you know about that they're different from what you read?
Yeah, you know what? Coming out of Forever Evil, personally, I love that event. A lot of people, it was sort of, I think you loved it or hated it. I loved it just for the breadth of storylines that they did. And usually I'm not a big fan of the outside stories, but when you get into it and you have Lex and Captain Cold and they're connected, and now with Lex and the Justice League, hey, spoiler alert, by the way, with Lex and the Justice, even if you're spoiled, you'll still love it. It's good story writing. But he's obviously a new quote-unquote new universe, New 52 DCU. He's younger than he was. Than in the original quote-unquote universe of DC, which now we find out still exists. But that's a whole other smuggle of crap that I'm not even going to but yeah, no, I like what they're doing with this character. They're kind of making him legit, but he's not. Like he's Captain Cold, and I'm reading very few DC books these days, but I am still reading Justice League, so I kind of want to see where they go with them, and when they do eventually get to him. Like I think he's more in the Superman books, if I recall correctly, but you guys can let me know if I'm right or wrong on that. So
I have not been reading Superman at this point because I don't love the artist on it right now, but probably because Jeff Johns is writing Superman, and it seems like he loves Captain Cold. So
yeah, well, Johns is so good. Obviously Snyder. Anyway, that's a whole other conversation.
They're all good writers, though. So if you're not reading anything from Jeff Johns, read it because he's awesome. And he's also working on Legends of Tomorrow, or at least he's behind the scenes of all these shows. So if you like the shows, give the comics a try too. But anything else, Chris, you wanted to add on that, or is that
you know what? No, no. Awesome. People will just be sitting at home going, "This guy doesn't know what the hell he's talking about."
But he does. But yeah, so New 52. Everything I said from before, they had powers instead of their guns, and that was kind of early on in New 52. They kind of changed that now. Vendetti, who's writing the current Flash run, has not really touched upon the Rogues, so I can't really say which direction they're going to go with, and I guess because Johns is using Captain Cold at the moment, since they have the Dark Side War going on now, we really have not seen Captain Cold that much in Justice League, and how much he's been interacting with the Justice League. So hopefully after this event, we won't have another event, and we could see, Lex Luthor and Captain Cold kind of interact with the Justice League more, because that's kind of been the disappointing thing, is that Forever Evil had a really good aftermath, but there wasn't a lot of time to tell that aftermath, so hopefully we'll have that after this event, which is going to be pretty long anyways. How about you, Greg? I'll go on, Chris.
On that note, by the way, sorry,
No,
the Dark Side Wars. The Dark Side War is amazing.
Yeah,
the
it's great.
writing, everything. Even if you've never read Justice League before, pick this up because you'll enjoy it.
100%. And also, I feel like you learn a lot, even if you don't know a lot about the pre-New 52. They're explaining a lot about Darkseid and his world. So if you don't know much about the character, definitely read it. I think it's new reader friendly for the most part. It's definitely dense, but it's new reader friendly. To read that, even though not Captain Cold and Heatwave, I still read it. But Greg, what is what is your opinion on the New 52 and how Captain Cold and Heatwave differ from their previous incarnations?
It's been a while since I've reread Francis and Brian's Flash run. I do remember Captain Cold's backstory seems similar, but I know everything with Lisa played out differently. She was in the hospital, I believe. She had
for a while.
Cancer. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Or was it cancer? I don't know.
I feel like she was in a coma, if I remember correctly. It's been a while since I've read it too. I love the run. I think she was in a coma, or maybe she did have cancer. It was something. She was definitely in the hospital.
Yeah. I remember thinking the layouts were terrific, and the visuals were just so creative in that run. Mm-hmm. They were really, really impressive. I mean, even if the story's not winning you over, those pages are just going to keep your eyes glued to them. I remember it was very fun, action-packed stuff. I mean, there was this whole conflict with Gorilla Grodd coming to Central City, and the Rogues team up. And then with Forever Evil, there was the Rogues Rebellion Limited series where they're battling even more villains. I mean, there was just a lot of fighting. So
there was a lot of fighting.
Yeah, if you want to see just a whole lot of action with the Rogues, then definitely New 52 has plenty of that for you. And the Rogues Rebellion Limited series, from what I do remember, haven't reread it since then, but it was very fun, and it was just like one big action scene after another, from what I remember.
I remember from Rogues Rebellion, going critic-wise, comic book critic-wise, I remember it was way too long, and I was like, this is not progressing at all. But I think if you read it in trade and got it for a cheap price, I think you'll have a bit more enjoyment than if you read it issue by issue. Because I loved it in the beginning, and then it just went, it was just a bit too long. But side note. But let's talk about other incarnations of the characters in other media. So I'm going to start out with Chris. Is there any cartoons or shows or movies that Captain Cold and Heatwave have been in that you really enjoyed or that you want to mention?
You know what? Really, the only show that, because I haven't seen many of the really it just comes down to the Flash and introducing those characters. Love the look, love the way they handled them. And I think they nailed them, and they're only going to evolve as great characters as they get more focus on the new show. So
yeah. Very true. Yeah, the Flash obviously is the biggest one. What were you going to say, Chris?
No, I was just going to say that's all I have on that right now. I'm just I think they cast them ridiculously well, because when I look at them, I see comic book characters come to life, not guys just trying to play a character I've read in comics. So.
Yeah. No, good point. Definitely a good point on that. What are some other media that Captain Cold and Heatwave have been in that you want to mention?
For me, it's just Captain Cold. Heatwave wasn't in it. Justice League Unlimited, the episode called Flash and Substance. Excuse me. Some of the Rogues, I believe it was Captain Cold, Trickster, Captain Boomerang, Mirror Master, and I think that was it. I believe so, off the top of my head. Mm-hmm. They're pissed off because the Flash museum is going to open, and they're like, why is this chump getting a museum? Why are they celebrating him? All he's done is ruin our lives. So they one after another try to take down the Flash, and I think two of them fail. Two of them fail, and then Trickster's going to go, and he comes up with this ridiculous plan And I think it was Captain Cold who said basically, screw this, let's just all attack him at once, because this is ridiculous. We're all failing miserably. So it's a really, really funny but also heartfelt episode, because it shows how Flash is such a different hero than like Batman, because they, when Batman shows up to try to help him, Batman's all like, the rogues are gunning for you. We have to do something about this. And Flash is really chill about it. And he's like, yeah, don't worry about it. They all hang out at this bar anyway. We could get them another time. So Flash and Orion, is that how it's pronounced? I always read the name, but I've never had to say it out loud. Orion.
I usually pronounce it that way also, but we both might be wrong, so who knows?
I think it's Orion.
Orion.
Orion. See, there we go.
Yeah. So he, Flash, and Batman go to a bar, and Trickster's there. Trickster's mad at the group because they didn't want to go along with his plan, so he left them. It was this ridiculous plan. I don't even remember how or what the ingredients were in it, but it was so over the top. And he's like, guys, if that won't work, just how about like 50,000 eggshells and a chainsaw? That'll work just fine. And they're like, no, we're done. And they fly away on like their flying cars or flying motorcycles. I don't know where they got those, but that's how they roll. So Batman and Chris, do you want to do the honors of saying his name again?
Orion.
Batman and Orion. I didn't want to mess up the name again. Batman and Orion confront Trickster while he's in the bar, being, upset at the world, basically. And they're threatening him. And Orion picks him up, and he's, like, getting ready to, break the guy's jaw. And Flash steps in, and he sits down with the guy. He's like, hey, man, are you off your medicine again? Because, you really need that. And he was being like, it was a friend-to-friend kind of thing. And he's like, look, if you if you go back to the hospital, I swear I'll come back in and play darts with you. And he's like, okay, we're cool. And they're walking away. Flash is like, oh, don't forget, turn yourself in once you're done with that drink. Trickster's like, oh, no, you got me again. Thanks. So it's just it was a really funny, and that's not spoiling all of the humor in it. That's just one standout scene. It was a really good episode. So again, Justice League Unlimited, Flash and Substance. I don't believe Heat Wave is in there. There may be like an Easter egg in the Flash Museum, but I didn't spot one.
Can I jump in really quick?
Yeah, of course.
The thing I love about that dialogue and that banter you just said back and forth there is it makes me think of it's very like 1960s like comic book dialogue.
Yeah.
I like it. I like it sort of like a throwback, right? So anyway, that's all I'd say on that.
That's a good point. Any other shows, Greg, that you want to mention?
I know there's an episode of The Brave and the Bold. Haven't watched it though. It involves Heat Wave, Captain Cold, and maybe a few others. And I know Captain Cold was in scattered episodes of Young Justice. Yes. They were like really, really, really minor appearances. Like he's part of a bigger group of people who have ice powers, and his role is very limited.
Yeah, I think because I'm a hardcore Young Justice fan, as you guys probably have seen throughout the past episodes of Legends Tomorrow. I think the scattered appearance you mentioned, also he was in the opening scene of the first episode where they're showing all the power, like how they're all sidekicks. So Kid Flash and Flash, they teamed up and defeated Captain Cold. So yes, very minor. You don't have to watch Young Justice if you're looking for a big episode of Captain Cold. Smallville, I think he made a really minor appearance in. I think he was like literally in a round table, and that's it, with villains. So he was in that. And then supposedly he was in the original Flash 1990 show, the original live-action one, but I haven't seen the show, so I can't, give you where he was or what episode he was in or what capacity he was in with the show. But you can tell that Captain Cold has been in a lot of different shows, even if it's just a minor role as, hey, I'm the villain, let's fight. But Heat Wave has only been in a few. I think both Heat Wave and Captain Cold was in Flashpoint, though, so I think the Rogues were in there.
Yeah.
So you can check that out.
After the opening sequence with Barry's mom and what happens, there's that whole thing with they have a quick battle, and then bombs are attached to them. And I think Wonder Woman, I watched it just a little bit ago, just to refresh my memory before doing this episode.
You just watched it 10 minutes before the podcast.
Exactly. I've seen the movie like 3 times before, but my memory on the specific details of those characters very fuzzy because they have such a minor role. But Wonder Woman saves Captain Cold by freezing the bomb that's attached to his belt. and Heatwave, I think it was Superman, saves him, and he just basically like holds the bomb in his hand, and then you just hear like poof, and you see a little smoke come through his hand. It was a funny scene. We were talking before recording this how we all like that movie, but the character designs kind of ruin it. Their shoulders are very, very wide, and then their waists are so thin. They're very, very muscular in that movie. Still a great animated movie.
Too. The faces look very anime. Not saying anything bad about anime, but it just doesn't fit for that story. So it's just like really weird character design, like you said.
Hashtag cat hates anime.
Put it in the comments below. And ironically, I just watched an anime yesterday, so.
Sure you did.
Yeah, sure. Trying to save myself here. But let's talk about our next thing that we're going to talk about, which is what makes these two characters stand out for you. I think let's talk about the rogues in general. Why I think they stand out, like I was saying in the beginning of this podcast, is that they have rules for themselves. They're not like total villains. They'll kill everybody in their sight for no reason. They have rules, and I like that idea that they kind of walk this thin line of hero and villain, which we're definitely seeing now, like we said in the current Justice League arc. But Chris, why do you like these two characters a lot?
You know what, you kind of touched it on there, and I talked about it earlier, was aside from Heatwave in the comic and the watching his family burn, but like more on Captain Cold, but they're they do have that code, and they do they're not gonna harm children, anything like that. Like that's where they draw the line. They would kill someone who was trying to do that before let's say they're about to rob a bank. You know what I mean? Like I could just see that as a scene happening where they're gonna, okay, let's just put this job on hold and get that guy and get back to the bank job. But I like that they are real, and they like any good character, they have dimensions to them, and they have issues, whether it's mental health, mental illness, or like family members that are sick and dying, and you're forced into, here's why I'm doing this, or just general being pissed off at the world. Anyway, but yeah, they're human and they're real. They're kind of they are villains to a point. And I think they give like the Flash and other heroes a run for their money based on just their smarts, and they kind of don't. They focus. I like that they focus on a certain job at a time. So like, hey, we're doing this, and that's it, and then we're done. Or we're doing this, and then we're gonna retire. It's like the classic. It's almost like the classic gambling addict. Okay, I'm gonna win $100,000 here, and then I'm out. I'm done. I'm out. Oh man, there's $1 million over there. Okay, I'm back in. And I like their, they still to this day have. I know we'll probably talk about it again, but they still have the cheesy dialogue here and there, and I love that. It's one thing with writing for the times that you're in, but it's another thing to just stick true to a character as well. And I think that's good. The minute you start to lose the charm of a character, I'm talking about villains having charm. The minute you start to lose that charm is the minute you start to lose interest, right? So
100%.
Yeah, that's it.
Awesome. How about you, Greg? Why do you think these two characters stand out to you?
I don't. I hate both of them.
Why am I on this podcast?
Yeah, I have no idea why I'm here.
All right, later, guys.
No, a lot of what Chris said I agree with. I think what makes them interesting is they're kind of like there's no black and white. They're in the gray. They're very moral shift, and but they still have a code of conduct, basically. They'll, like you said, no children. I think there was a good quote about that in one of the comics. I don't remember which one though, but there's a line that they won't cross. There's a lot of bad stuff on the line before they reach that line, but there's still a certain thing that they won't do. They still, they're bad guys, but they're not that bad when compared to some people like who's a good comparison? From DC, like
Vandal Savage.
Sure, Vandal Savage. Yeah. There you go. I don't think the Justice. Wow, I almost said the Justice League.
I don't think they're as bad, right?
Yeah. I don't think this duo would be willing to wipe out like almost half the population to move forward with humanity. But maybe a Vandal made them a great offer. I mean, Mirrormaster was along for the ride on that one in Justice League Doom. And in a couple of weeks, we'll actually be highlighting Vandal Savage. So we'll talk about him more. Yes. Yeah. So yeah, a lot of what you said, Chris. They have a code, and I think that makes them very interesting. Also, they're very snarky. I almost said snarty. That would have been a terrible pun.
It's a great
atrocious pun.
You should have done it. It would have been perfect.
No. Speaking of puns, like we're on opposite ends here. I do like some of the really interesting puns that they do. When the Heatwave is always talking about hot or hell, or he does that in the comics a lot, begins to add up a little bit. But Captain Cold, some of them were more subtle. Like there was an episode where they're in a bar, and the way he orders his drink, and there's a song in the background that's fitting. I don't remember the name of the song, but it has to do with cold somehow. Something like that's really interesting to me. But when every other line is a cold pun, it's like, dude, I get it. I think it was when he encountered Chillbane. Chillbane made a cold pun, and Captain Cold was like, really, with the puns? I've been over that for a while. So that was really funny. But yeah, I like both of them. I think there's a lot of material, a lot of great material with both of them, and here's hoping Legends of Tomorrow capitalizes on that, and they're not just two bad guys who like to talk about temperature.
Let's see. We will see. But we're going to talk about now the Flash television show and their appearances there, which we kind of touched upon a little bit before. But yeah, I like both Heatwave and Captain Cold in the show, but I do think they need to be fleshed out a bit more. I think every single time I watch them, like, they're perfect, but I still want them to really show and kind of dig deep to who they are. Like, even like when Lisa was introduced, I didn't really see that family aspect, and I think they need to show the family aspect a bit more. Maybe even just have an episode just for Captain Cold in the Rogues. I think just to really show the depth of who the Rogues are. I don't think we've gotten that fully, but it's only season 1 of Flash, and they have so much more time to flesh them out. But I remember in season 1, that was something I was upset about. I was like, I want a little bit more. And talk about the puns. I like the puns on the Flash. I guess I'm like more in the middle. Like, I like them, but I don't love them. I just think they're, if it's too much, I'd be like, all right, guys, the puns. But I think it's just enough so far on the Flash, and we'll see on Legends of Tomorrow where that goes. But Chris, what you talked about a little bit, but what do you think about these two characters on the Flash and their portrayals on the show?
Yeah, you know what? I think they've done a really good job considering just how many characters have been introduced on the Flash. What's nice about that is both of these guys have been showcased more than, say, the other characters, which is obviously on purpose to lead into Legends of Tomorrow. But I think they've been portrayed great. I do love the cheesy banter because and the puns, because again, that's part of the charm. That's where the characters come from. That's their foundation. Sure, it's some people might get a little annoyed by it, but also you come to love it too. You expect it, and I think you mentioned it just jumped out at me about not having a lot of time to do it all in terms of backstories and really delving into the characters, but we'll see in terms of family connections. Legends, the TV show, the new one, will have time, like literally time, to go back and look at, and they'll be able to, I think if they're smart, and they probably will do it, they'll show you bits of their past because because of time travel and what have you. I'm looking forward to something like that happening, where it's like, okay, you don't need to dedicate entire episodes. You can just dedicate snippets of time. Like if you look at, for example, like Lost, the TV show Lost, they did that remarkably well through almost every season, and short little bits here and there. So I think if they do something like that, that would be, I think that would be well received.
Yeah. Speaking of Lost, the mystical elements, they kind of went all over the place there and were inconsistent, but what kept me coming back to that show was how well they handled the characters. They made interesting and, humanizing characters, and that's, hopefully we'll see that with Legends of Tomorrow. They have more than a handful of characters to work with, but I mean, in the right hands, you can really give each one the spotlight properly. Like you were saying, the whole time travel element, it would be very interesting if they go back to a time period when, Cold and his sister are younger and they're being physically abused by their dad. Would he interfere? I imagine he would be tempted to do something about that, and maybe the other people would have to hold him back, or maybe it would be Heatwave who would say, I get what you're going through, but you can't step in. You can't get involved in this.
Sorry to jump in, okay, but I have to. on that note of going back in time to a scene, a situation where, Cold as a kid and his sister are being abused by their dad. I think that's an episode that could be ridiculously powerful, where art touches life, and if I would think that they've probably thought of something like that already, and personally, those kind of episodes I really love because it gets a conversation going outside of a regular TV show, and where it doesn't become about TV show, it becomes about sort of reaching out and trying to help people, whether it's whether you agree with that avenue of doing it that way or not. I think any kind of light shed on those types of real life situations is always a good thing. So sorry, I just had to go down that path for a second. But,
no, that's I like you were saying, Kat. I think that's what the two have been lacking in the Flash. There's been hints of character depth, and we've seen that, but a lot of it has just been kind of like spectacle and jokes with these two characters, and I would love to see more of really delving deep into these two, and something like that would be a great way.
Yeah, 100%. Gregg, any other opinion on the two characters?
No, not really.
Well, now we're going to be moving on to the Legends of Tomorrow portion, which is our last portion of the podcast. So, why do you think these two characters will be great additions? And let's start with Chris on this one. Why do you think they'll be good additions to this new show?
You know what? I think the reason I love them in the show, I love the dynamic of what I think will happen. They'll be ones, they'll make the hard decisions, There'll be someone in the group that won't want to make that tough call, depending on the situation, and these guys will step up and make that call, or take actions necessary to make sure things get fixed or a situation is resolved. I'm looking forward to sort of the banter, or even, really, I'd love to see White Canary and Captain Cold get each other's throats, and or Heatwave, and have her just kick the crap out of them, like things like that. Like it's little things like that which would be huge, and but like I said, I think they're going to be there to. They're going to play the other side of it sometimes, the devil's advocate. Like, well, no, we have to do this because X, or because Y, and they're gonna be the ones they're gonna make those tough decisions. I predict them doing things outside of the group that on a whole overall, like Rip Hunter would agree with, because it got the job done, and it had to be done at that time, and that could create some good tension, and bring the characters together even more, even though it seems like they're apart. So.
Yeah, all good points. I totally agree. That's what I'm excited for too, is that they're so different, and it's like, how are they going to all interact with each other? And then they are going to take the they're gonna be the people that say, hey, we got to do this, even if it's the hard choice. Let's do it. And they're not gonna. Hopefully, they won't be too villainous, because I think they're gonna be walking the line a little bit more towards the good side, because they're on a superhero team. But they're gonna have that kind of villainous side, like, oh, all right, we got to do the hard choices. And I'm excited to see the chemistry between all characters, having two people that were villains going on this team, and seeing what the DC TV universe brings for them, if they're going to be true heroes, or will they go back to being villains after this? Who knows? How about you, Gregg? What are you excited to see with these characters on Legends?
Like you both said, I think their dynamics with everyone will be interesting. White Canary, that I haven't really thought about that yet, but it's interesting because Captain Cold, he tends to fall for people very easily. And he's also a womanizer, so I can see Sarah not putting up with any of his nonsense, and him just being like head over heels for her, like him just totally love struck by her and her wanting nothing to do with him. But at the same rate, I can see her siding with them when it comes to Rip Hunter said this needs to be done to save whatever the fate of the world. And I could see those three being on the same side, realizing, hey, this is what needs to be done, so let's do it. And maybe, people like Ray Palmer and Firestorm and maybe Hawkgirl saying there has to be another way. So I could see the group kind of dividing that way and struggling when it comes to decisions. And I could see people like Captain Cold or Heatwave just going ahead with it, not really giving a damn what other people think. If they think it needs to be done, they're going to do it. I also wonder if when they go through time, they're going to want to maybe snag something for themselves. Maybe if they go into the past, some treasure or something, they'll try to, find a way to make this work for them where, we can save the world, but we're not going to do it for free. If there's something we see along the way, we're going to take it. And I'm especially looking forward to how they'll interact with Ray Palmer, because he's kind of like, I think it was Mark Guggenheim who described him as kind of like the cheerleader of the group. He's kind of like this puppy-eyed, optimistic guy, and I could just see them pulling his strings and pissing him off.
They'll steal his stuff. They'll steal his watch.
yeah. Imagine Captain Cold getting in the armor and flying around using his cold.
I can see it.
But so going to be a lot of different interactions that should be hopefully very entertaining. There's certainly a lot of potential there. And like you guys were saying, it's going to be interesting when it comes to the moral dilemmas they face.
Yeah. I think... Oh, go on, Chris. Go.
Thanks. Sorry. I was going to say, I know we're talking about Heatwave and Captain Cold, but I do want to say I am looking forward to seeing, because she has to be, I'm looking forward to seeing White Canary and how different her demeanor is going to be and her outlook, because I really think that she's going to come back different from what she used to be. And I still think she's going to kick butt, but I think I'm looking forward to seeing it. Literally, it's a rebirth of the character.
Always with the puns.
I had to.
This is a podcast of puns. It has to be. It's Captain Cold and Heatwave.
Legends of puns.
So hopefully she's not as cold as ice as she used to be. And, and yeah, I think it's going to be a pretty hot show.
I was going to say, is she going to turn up the heat?
Hopefully you enjoyed all those puns. But yeah, I think from all of us, from the Legends of Tomorrow podcast hosts here, and Tony's not with us today, but me and Gregg, we're kind of most excited to see White Canary. Like, out of everything, and especially me, because I'm a bigger Arrow fan than I am Flash, but I love both shows, but if I had to choose one, probably Arrow. I'm super excited for White Canary, and it just seems like she's the one that definitely keeps coming up when we talk about Legends of Tomorrow, because I think she's such an interesting character, and is going to be going through some interesting developments. But let's go on to, we talked about dynamics, we talked about the strengths. Was there any other things we want to talk about with the dynamics and strengths of the characters, or do you think we discussed all that?
Cisco has had a surprisingly close connection to these characters, and I mean, I just love. I don't think I've met anyone who dislikes Cisco. I mean, he's such a lovable character. He's not this over-the-top, annoying guy who's always trying to be funny. He's legitimately funny. He feels like, if a fan was in the show, but their intelligence was boosted a gazillion times. When it comes to the tech and the science behind all the ridiculous things they're working with. But like when he geeked out over meeting Black Canary, or does she? She goes by Black Canary. White Canary just went by Canary back in the day. But little things like that, or even the way he was played by Golden Glider. Hopefully Cisco will have a cameo, because there is some material there. There's some history. And I'm curious to see if Lisa legitimately has feelings for him. It seems like she didn't just play him just for the sake of benefiting the team. It seems like there's a chance there. He'll never go. Well, he claims he'll never go for her because she's a villain. And
we'll see, though.
Yeah.
We'll see. It'll be an interesting dynamic. As we talk about interesting dynamics, that would be an interesting one. So the last question we have is there anything else we want to talk about that is expectations for the show with Captain Cold and Heatwave? For me, again, I just want them to flesh out the characters a bit more. I actually would really like to see Lisa in a couple episodes. I don't know if they would do that, but I think Lisa is such, a connection to both Heatwave, because Heatwave likes Lisa also, and then Captain Cold, obviously, it's his sister. So it'd be really cool to see her, pop up somewhere. I think she's important. Maybe they'll do that more in the Flash show, but I always thought she was an interesting character. So yeah, just more depth. How about you, Chris? What is the last things that you would really like to see for Legends Tomorrow with these two characters?
Yeah, I will say something. I'll get to them in one quick sec, but I think what I'm really looking forward to on this show, just the show, but on the show, is seeing characters that we've never seen before. So Hawkgirl, Rip Hunter, right? So I'm really looking forward to seeing something totally new. We've all sort of seen most of the characters already, but these guys, and I want to see more. I'm really looking forward to seeing Martin Stein really elevate his character, and I think that's going to be fun to sort of see. Definitely two characters we've never seen before, but also a third that we haven't really seen too much of, to really get that spotlight. And yeah, I think in terms of Heatwave and Captain Cold, I want to see how they evolve as characters, and I want to see a bit more layers from the onion, so to speak, on both of them. And that's pretty much where I'm at with that. And I think in CW casting we'll trust, right? So it's all been good so far.
100%, totally agree. So Gregg, is there anything else you want to mention that you want to see with these two characters in Legends?
It's obvious the show is going to be very fun. It's going to embrace time travel, have a good time with it. It's not going to try to duplicate what Arrow's doing or what Flash is doing. It's going to do its own thing. It's going to be more sci-fi as they jump through time. But I'd like to see a bigger focus on character instead of puns or just them using their abilities. The puns, I don't mind it if they're implemented well. A good pun is always enjoyable, but it feels like the frequency of them, it got to be a little much. I'd rather see some clever puns sprinkled in here and there. And yeah, I'd just like to make us really care about these characters instead of going like, hey, there's that comic book villain I like, and look, he's shooting ice or fire. Do something great with them. There's a lot of potential here. I mean, we have two criminals joining a team with a former member of the League of Assassins, a brilliant inventor, a brilliant scientist, a girl who's been resurrected countless times. I mean, there's a lot of possibilities here, and I really want to see them focus on character interaction, because as much as I enjoy what they're capable of in terms of action sequences, I felt like that may have been like one of the weak points of the Flash season 1 for me, because I understand that the Flash is going to be downplayed in his own show, because otherwise he's going to be unstoppable. But it becomes a little, the suspension of disbelief becomes difficult when you're constantly thinking, how is Flash having trouble with this? Because you think he's acting like an idiot. Like, there was one episode where Flash and Captain Cold just end up walking down the street, and they're just shooting everywhere at Flash, and Flash is constantly racing around them, and he has so many opportunities to run up and try to grab their gun or something. And I feel like there's clever ways that they could try to handle the action, and it wasn't really seen with those two, unfortunately, except for the train sequence. I think, and whenever Captain Cold used hostages, that really helps justify how he could get the better of Flash. It's like Captain Cold doesn't want to kill innocents, but he knows he has faith in Flash's ability to save them. So he takes advantage of that. That's something I would like to see. Even though Flash's appearance, we presume it's going to be minimal in this show. I mean, in that trailer, you saw him working with them, and he's obviously going to have a cameo. But yeah, basically what it boils down to, stronger focus on what makes them interesting instead of just the puns and the using their guns.
All good points, definitely. So now we are wrapping up the show. We're going to just talk about stuff that's coming up for our channels, or our websites and everything. So So, Chris, what is coming up for your website or anything that you want to plug?
Yeah, the site's been on a bit of a hiatus for the last month and a bit, just summer and all that good stuff happening. But yeah, gonna get back on the train here in terms of just a bunch of indie interviews coming up. In my neck of the woods, 3 hours north, is the Edmonton Expo coming up the end of September, and so I'm gonna go up there and do a bunch of interviews with indie comic artists and writers, and maybe some actors too. So you can look for that sort of closer to the end of September, beginning of October. But in between that, interviews with local artists and writers in the Calgary area where I'm at. So yeah, there you go. GeekNerdNet.com is the site, and @GeekNerdNet is the Twitter. And I already told you my other handle earlier, so there, my plugs are done.
Awesome. Very cool. Well, you were mentioning a podcast earlier. Did you want to plug that in?
No, not yet. Not ready to go yet. Well, that'll come soon.
Awesome. Gregg, is there anything that you want to mention? Other?
No, I mean, all of my work I'll promote on my Twitter. It's just @Gregg Katzman. That's GreggKatzman. I'm a freelance writer for Screen Rant, so occasionally I cover movies, TV, and video games over there. And I write for fun on my blog. That's where I write reviews and editorials. I'm a big Ninja Turtles fan, so I've been reviewing the Nick Show and the comic book series, and I'm also, writing opinion pieces on a lot of stuff in the comic book genre. Like there's that rumor, very very loose rumor, that Kraven may be the villain in the Spider-Man reboot. So I wrote an editorial about that because Kraven's my favorite Spider-Man villain. So I wrote an editorial about why I think that could work and why I'm opposed to that idea. So I tried to have a fair approach to it, and instead of just saying that'll be the best or that'll be the worst, try to show the pros and cons of it. Try to be more open-minded. Yeah.
Very cool. So go check that all out. For me, of course, check out my YouTube channel, Comic Uno. Check out my group YouTube channel, Comic Frontline. You can check out my comic book, Like Father, Like Daughter. We're getting ready to do issue 2 soon. And also, this week today I'm going to actually be recording with Supergirl Radio. We're going to be talking about a Linda Danvers series of Supergirl, so I'm a big fan of hers. So check that out, and when that's posted, we will, of course, promote that on Legends Tomorrow also, because DC TV podcasts are doing a little collab here, so I'm very excited about that. So, Gregg, where can everyone find us for Legends of Tomorrow, all our social media stuff?
Sure. It's time to get pluggy with it. On Facebook, you can find puberty. Excuse me, voice crack there for a second. On Facebook, you can find us at facebook.com/Legends of Tomorrow podcast. On Twitter, you can follow us at Legends_podcast. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to email us at the Legends of Tomorrow podcast @gmail.com. And please remember to subscribe on iTunes and Stitcher Radio, as well as YouTube. If you enjoyed listening to us, or even if you didn't enjoy, please leave us a review and give us some feedback, because it would mean a lot to us, and we really want to hear from you guys. See how we're doing, where we're doing well, where we may make some improvements. So we're looking forward to that. And if you love other DC comic book shows, then please listen to the other podcasts at dctvpodcast.com.
Yeah, so go check all that stuff out. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Chris, for joining us as a guest. And we will have episode 5 in 2 weeks, so look forward to that. And we will see you guys. Vandal Savage. Look forward to it.
Thanks.
Thanks for listening.